What's going on, guys? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. This is pros and cons for the Samsung Galaxy S9. In this video, I'm going to be going over some of the strengths and weaknesses of this phone. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. That being said, let's get into it. So my first pro for this phone is the quality of the display. This phone has a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1440p, a PPI of 570, an aspect ratio of 18.5 by 9, and a screen to body ratio of 83.6%. So as you can see, the quality of this display is really impressive. It might not be the biggest out there, but if you're doing something like viewing photos or watching a video or maybe playing a game with more complicated graphics, having a good quality display might make up for the size. And in addition to just the resolution itself, having a Super AMOLED display also means the colors are going to be a lot brighter and bolder than they are on other types of displays. My second pro for this phone is the storage. This phone has 64 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so that is quite a bit. You're going to be able to do a lot with this storage, and if you're more of an average user, you're not going to have to worry at all about running out of space. And if you're a power user who has lots of apps and lots of photos and videos, remember you can put photos and videos on a microSD card and you'll have plenty of room for apps even after the system. So no matter what your situation is, having 64 gigabytes of internal storage, especially in this price range, is going to be real nice considering brand new phones that you can get for a similar price sometimes only have 32. My third pro for this phone is the processor. Internally, this phone is getting 4 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone and it came back with a single core score of 485 and a multi-core score of 2118. So with this type of processing power, you can basically do whatever you want to do with the phone, whether you're just doing basic activities like sending text messages, making calls, browsing the web, going on social media, or if you're doing more intense activities like high performance gaming or maybe video editing with larger files. This phone can do it all, and I really can't say that for other phones in this price range. Usually around the price this phone is going for, as far as brand new phones are concerned, you're lucky if you can even get half of this processing power. So this is a real good deal if you're looking for something that's a little bit more powerful. My fourth pro for this phone is that it has a headphone jack. Right here at the bottom, we got a 3.5mm headphone jack next to a USB-C charging port, the microphone, and the speaker. So the reason this is such a good thing is that flagship phones nowadays don't even have headphone jacks. In fact, not only flagship phones, lots of other phones that aren't flagship phones for that matter, are all losing their headphone jacks as the new models come out. And as good as Bluetooth is, it's nice to have a good old-fashioned pair of wired headphones that you can use with your phone, and that combined with all the other flagship features that this phone has really makes it a good deal. Speaking of features, my fifth pro for this phone is the extra features it has. This phone has lots of other features that phones in its price range that you can find brand new are not going to have. For example, wireless charging. Wireless charging is a real good feature to have for many different uses. In addition to that, this phone also has NFC, so you can use Google and Samsung Pay. And even though that feature is really starting to get more and more available with other lower end phones, around the price you can get this phone at, you're probably not going to find a brand new phone that has NFC. All in all, if you're looking for a phone that has the features of a flagship phone, but only have the budget for an entry-level or mid-range phone, then the Samsung Galaxy S9 is a really good option. My first con for this phone is the display size. With only a 5.8-inch display, it's probably gonna be a little bit underwhelming, especially compared to phones these days. Phones these days are getting bigger and bigger. It's not unusual to have a 6.5-inch display, and that's quite a bit bigger than 5.8. And having a larger display, of course, means things show up easier on the screen. Because they're larger, they're going to be less of a strain on your eyes, and that can be really beneficial to a lot of people. So if you are one of those people then you're probably gonna wanna look at another device, because even though this phone has a Super AMOLED display with really good quality, things do look a little tiny on it. Now, if you don't use your phone for a whole lot of content consumption and just wanna be able to do stuff like view photos in really good resolution and that sort of thing, then I could see it not being really a problem, and then it could even be a benefit just because this phone is smaller, which means that although you might not be able to see things as large, you also are gonna have an easier time holding it with one hand like I'm doing now, or carrying it around in your pocket. My second con for this phone is the camera features. Although the camera quality itself is really good as well as the video quality, this phone is rather featureless. Part of this is really just because it's old, but for a flagship phone, it really doesn't have anything. It has the front-facing camera, which is really nice, and the 12 megapixel rear camera, but it doesn't have anything else. It doesn't have an ultra-wide camera, no telephoto lens that most flagship phones these days have, and even worse, no portrait mode. Portrait mode is such a basic, common feature that it's pretty much an expectation, and pretty much every phone out there, except the phones that are super cheap, is gonna have at least portrait mode, if not a couple other features. And this phone doesn't really have anything besides just the basic camera stuff. So if you are looking for those kinds of features, then this phone is gonna be a little disappointing to you. My third con for this phone is the battery. This phone has a 3000 milliamp hour battery that supports 15-watt fast charging. So this battery is actually really small. You're not only not gonna get a ton of life per charge, but you're also not gonna have the longevity that larger batteries have. And that's already a drawback in and of itself for a brand new phone, but this phone is by no means brand new. It was released in 2018. So this phone's really starting to get on the older side for a phone. So you're really gonna have to think about that when you're considering buying one, because over time, all batteries degrade. So even if you get one that's only lightly used, it's gonna be quite a bit more worn down than a brand new phone, and adding that on to the fact that the battery is small to begin with, you're gonna be looking at some big risk of the battery degrading even more to the point where you can barely use it without it dying. My fourth con for this phone is the location of the fingerprint scanner. The fingerprint scanner is really fast and responsive on this phone. Don't get me wrong, I like that part of it, but taking a look at the back, it's so close to the camera that it's so easy to accidentally touch the lens. And although that's not going to damage it in and of itself, of course, it's just super annoying to accidentally touch the lens or risk accidentally touching it every time you go to unlock your phone. I really think they could have done better on that, and I do think Samsung realized right away that that was not a good idea, because I haven't seen this type of design since. My fifth and final con for the Samsung Galaxy S9 is the Bixby button. This button is probably one of the most annoying features I've ever seen on a smartphone. It serves no real purpose except for activating Bixby, which of course can be useful sometimes, but there's so many other ways to access Bixby. Even the iPhone XS Max that was made around the same time as this phone has Siri, which is basically the same thing as Bixby, but Apple still didn't put an external button on it. And with Samsung typically having more advanced hardware and designs than Apple, should have thought that that really wasn't a necessary thing to put on a phone. I really do think the Bixby button is more of a nuisance than it is help, and any phone that has that or something similar would be much better without it. But those were my pros and cons for the Samsung Galaxy S9. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you want to learn more about this phone, definitely check out my analysis on whether or not it's worth buying in 2021, as well as several videos on the channel where I compare this phone to others. But that's it for today. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.